So last time we start practical session. We completed how to take history of history taking part of the long case. So history taking is only for long case and written work is also only for long case. For short case there is no written work, there is no history taking. For short case there is just examination part. General examination plus system examination. So from long case we completed how to take history or the history taking part of the long case. Now we proceed for physical examination of the patient. This physical examination of patient includes general examination plus systemic examination. So first we discuss general examination, that is more important than systemic examination. So what is general examination of patient? So as the name suggests, general examination means you want to examine the patient in general from top to bottom. His face, eyes, skin, nails, finger, the look, everything, the physique, everything. You have to look at the patient and found any abnormal things. You have to find out any abnormal things. So general examination means it is a complete examination from head to toe. That is general examination of patient. But for exam point of view, the general examination include first, general examination always starts with neurological assessment of the patient. Neurological assessment of patient means whether patient is conscious and oriented, whether patient is conscious or unconscious. Obviously, your patient is conscious because they are board patient, they are not ICU patient. So your patient is no doubt conscious and oriented, but still you know some causes for unconsciousness or the causes for unconsciousness, causes for disorientation, which are the common questions to be asked in exam. So you see some causes for unconsciousness. Which are the causes for unconsciousness? Very simple. Patient become unconscious when after head trauma, head injury. Then after some infections of the brain like meningitis, encephalitis. Then stroke. Stroke means cerebrovascular accident, which also cause patient to become unconscious. Then hypoglycemia, severe hypoglycemia, patient can become unconscious. Metabolic causes. Metabolic causes include uremia. Uremia means in renal failure patient. Then in hepatic failure, that is hepatic encephalopathy, the patient can become unconscious. So you should know some key causes for unconsciousness. Most important, head injury, meningitis, encephalitis, stroke, then metabolic causes like hypoglycemia, uremia, hepatic encephalopathy, etc. So these are some causes for unconsciousness which are asked in exam. So your neurological assessment, patient conscious oriented. Now orientation about time, place and person. Patient should be oriented about the time. He should know the time. He should know the place where he is, and he should identify the persons with him or the relatives with him. So patient should be oriented to time, place, and person. So your first line in general examination is patient is conscious, oriented to time, place, and person. After neurological assessment, the next point comes is temperature, whether patient is febrile or febrile. You can just touch the patient with back of your hand. Usually you should touch the patient with back of your hand, or you can check the temperature on thermometer. So everyone should know how to check temperature on thermometer. And then you write down whether patient is febrile or afebrile. So general examination start with neurological assessment. Patient is conscious, oriented, time, place, and person. Then comes temperature, whether patient is febrile or febrile. Then come vital parameters. Vital parameters means the parameters which are required for a person to live. Or without this, the life is not possible. So they are called vital parameters. So these include pulse, BP, and respiration. Pulse rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate. These three are called vital parameters. Now about the pulse. Which are the points to be noted? So first about the pulse, you have to palpate the pulse. Usually we are palpating radial artery against the radial bone at the wrist joint. See, we are usually count the pulse at radial artery, which is at the wrist joint against the radial bone, with the pulse of three fingers. Always palpate the artery with the pulse of three fingers. So this is the method of palpating artery and counting the pulse rate. So the wrist should be slightly flexed with the help of pulse of three fingers. against the radial bone at the wrist joint. You have to palpate the radial artery and you have to count the pulse rate. And you have to feel the pulsation and you have to count the pulse rate. So this is the method of counting pulse rate. So in case of pulse, you have to first count the pulse rate. Then at the same time you have to see the rhythm, whether your pulse is regular or irregular. Then volume of the pulse is nothing but it is the amplitude of the pulse, whether it is low volume, high volume or normal volume. Now how to decide whether it is high volume, low volume or normal volume? So you can compare the volume of the patient's pulse with your pulse volume. You can compare the volume of patient's pulse with your pulse volume because you are normal. So you can compare and you can decide whether this volume is high, low or normal. So it is nothing but it is the amplitude of the pulse and it depends upon your stroke output of the heart. The amplitude of the pulse or the volume of pulse depends on stroke volume of the heart. Means the blood which is ejected by the heart per beat. Or in short, it depends on your systolic blood pressure. It depends on your systolic blood pressure. So, when palpating radial artery, you have to count the pulse rate completely for 1 minute. So, pulse rate for 1 minute, then the rhythm of the pulse, whether regular or irregular, volume of the pulse, whether it is normal volume, high volume, or low volume. You can compare with your pulse volume. Then you have to see some peripheral pulsations, whether they are palpable, whether they are present or absent. These are the 4 points for pulse: rate, rhythm, volume, and peripheral pulsation. These are the 4 points. You have to write them. Now, the normal pulse rate is 60 to 90. That is your normal pulse rate of 60 to 100. So, this is your normal pulse rate 60 to 100. Below 60, we call bradycardia. Above 100, we call tachycardia. Now, this tachycardia can be sinus tachycardia or tachycardia because of cardiac arrhythmia. Bradycardia can be sinus bradycardia or bradycardia because of heart block. Means cardiac problem. So tachycardia, bradycardia. Now you should know some causes for tachycardia and some causes for bradycardia. So these are some causes for tachycardia. That means increased pulse rate above 100 is tachycardia. Decreased pulse rate below 60 is bradycardia. Now the causes for tachycardia, everyone know when pulse rate increase, or you have idea when your pulse rate is increased. So any febrile condition, when your patient is having fever, there is increase in pulse rate. The exception is only typhoid fever or enteric fever, where the pulse rate is low, not increased. That is called relative bradycardia. But any febrile condition can cause tachycardia, or fever always cause tachycardia. Anemia, anemia cause tachycardia. Patient in shock, then third of the causes, any painful condition, then cardiac arrhythmia like atrial fibrillation, ventricular tachycardia. So these are some causes for tachycardia. You should know at least 2 to 3 causes. Then causes for bradycardia means decreased pulse rate below 60. The opposite to thrombosis is hypothyroidism. Then abscess because of strenuous physical work. Then heart block. Then drug induced. Drug induced means like beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, they can cause bradycardia. And increased intracranial pressure also cause bradycardia, that is hydrocephalus. So these are some causes for bradycardia, causes for tachycardia. You should know 2 to 3 causes for tachycardia, 2 to 3 causes for bradycardia. And this is the method of seeing the pulse: rate, rhythm, volume, and peripheral pulsation. These are the points to be noted for pulse. Now about the rhythm. Rhythm is whether pulse is regular or irregular. Whether pulse is regular or irregular. Now the causes for irregular pulse are, means rhythm is not regular. So causes are atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, means cardiac arrhythmia, cause irregular pulse. The most common is atrial flutter and atrial fibrillation. So we will discuss this in cardiovascular system in theory part. What is fibrillation, what is flutter, why there is irregular pulse, why there is tachycardia. So that we will discuss in theory part in cardiovascular system. Just note down causes for irregular pulse. Now causes for low volume pulse and high volume pulse. So volume can be low volume, high volume or normal volume. So for low volume pulse means whenever there is decreased systolic pressure or decreased stroke volume by the heart, that causes low volume pulse. So such conditions are shock, means hypotension, causes low volume pulse, dehydration causes low volume pulse, aortic stenosis, mitral stenosis. Stenosis means it is the narrowing of the mitral valve opening, that is mitral stenosis, and when there is narrowing of the aortic valve opening, it is called aortic stenosis. So stenosis means narrowing of opening. Mitral stenosis means narrowing of mitral valve opening. Aortic stenosis means narrowing of the aortic valve opening. So what happens if there is narrowing of the opening of the cardiac wall? The blood cannot go forward if the opening is small. The blood cannot go forward. If there is mitral stenosis, the blood from atria to ventricle is not able to come completely through the narrow opening. If it is aortic stenosis, it is not possible for the blood to go from ventricle to aorta through the narrow opening. So that results in decreased stroke volume. So there is mechanical obstruction to the flow of blood. There is mechanical obstruction to the flow of blood that results in decreased stroke volume by the heart. If there is decreased stroke volume by the heart, means it is the amount of blood ejected by the heart per beat. If it is low, obviously your pulse volume is also low. So the causes for low volume pulse are shock, stenotic lesions of the cardiac walls, particularly aortic stenosis, mitral stenosis, dehydration. These are the causes for low volume pulse. Now, causes for high volume pulse. High volume pulse means increased stroke volume or increased blood volume ejected by the heart per beat. So such conditions are called hyperdynamic conditions. Such conditions are called hyperdynamic conditions. Hyperdynamic condition means your heart has to pump a large volume of blood. These conditions are called hyperdynamic conditions. If heart is pumping a large volume of blood, no doubt the pulse volume is also high. If stroke volume is high, pulse volume is also high. Now, which are these conditions? Which are these hyperdynamic conditions? These are anemia, thyroiditis, beriberi, pregnancy, and appositive stenosis. Appositive stenosis is aortic regurgitation, mitral regurgitation. Regurgitation means the wall cannot close properly. Incompetence of the wall. Appositive stenosis. Stenosis means narrowing of opening, and regurgitation means the wall is not completely closed or remain open partially. That is the incompetence of the wall of regurgitation. What happens if mitral valve is not closed properly during ventricular systole? Means when your ventricles are contracting, the mitral valve should be closed. But if the mitral valve is not closing properly or remain open, what will happen when your ventricle contracts? The blood will regurgitate back into the atria. If it is aortic regurgitation, what happens if or when there is a diastolic phase? When there is a diastolic phase, means after ventricular contraction, when ventricles are pumping the blood from ventricle to the aorta, and after when the systolic phase is over and diastolic phase starts, means ventricles are relaxing. At that time, your aortic valve should be completely closed. Means after systole, aortic valve should get closed. After systole or when ventricular contraction is completed, aortic valve should get closed. But if the aortic valve is not getting closed completely, what will happen? The blood from aorta regurgitates back into the ventricle. That is aortic regurgitation. So these are also hyperdynamic conditions causing high volume pulse. Opposite is stenosis. The causes for high volume pulse are anemia, thyroidopathy, beriberi, pregnancy is also hyperdynamic condition, aortic regurgitation, mitral regurgitation. These are the causes for high volume pulse or hyperdynamic conditions. So you should know causes for tachycardia, causes for bradycardia, causes for irregular pulse, causes for high volume pulse, causes for low volume pulse. Now, the peripheral pulsation. Which are the peripheral pulsations? Commonly, we palpate radial artery. This is the most common at the wrist bone against the radial cone with the help of pulse of three fingers. And which are other arteries that can be palpated? Which are the other arteries that can be palpated? That means these are the peripheral pulsations. Now, in upper limb, after radial artery comes brachial artery. So, where is your brachial artery? That is in the antecubital fossa at the elbow joint on the medial aspect. So you have to flex slightly the patient's elbow and medial to the bicep. So this is called as antecubital fossa. On the medial aspect, here lies the brachial artery. You have to palpate the brachial artery here. So this is the anatomical location of brachial artery. So in upper limb, radial artery, brachial artery. Now in the neck region, there is carotid artery. So carotid artery is always palpated against the thyroid cartilage or against the border of sternocleidomastoid muscle at the level of thyroid cartilage. So here is your carotid artery against the anterior border of this sternocleidomastoid muscle and at the level of thyroid cartilage. At the level of thyroid cartilage, here is the carotid artery. You can palpate in the neck region. Then in the lower limb, first comes femoral artery, which is lying in the groin area. So this is the groin area, or this area is also called as inguinal region. This area is also called inguinal region. Here lies the femoral artery. You have to palpate the femoral artery here in the groin or in the inguinal region with the help of all of three fingers with little bit more pressure because it lies deep. So you have to give more pressure to fit femoral artery because it lies very deep. So here is the location of femoral artery. So in lower limb, first comes femoral artery, then comes popliteal artery. Popliteal artery is behind the knee joint. Here is the popliteal fossa. This behind the joint is the popliteal fossa. So in popliteal fossa, you have to palpate popliteal artery, and this is the method of palpating popliteal artery. You have to bend the patient's knee. You have to hold the knee with the help of your two hands. Your fingers should be hooked inside. You have to hold this knee joint like this, and your finger should be hooked in the popliteal fossa, and you can palpate the popliteal artery. So this is the method of palpating popliteal artery. So radial artery, brachial artery, carotid artery, femoral artery, and popliteal artery. Then comes posterior tibial, which lies behind the medial malleolus. This part is called as medial malleolus. So it is in the on the medial aspect behind the medial malleolus lies posterior tibial artery. So this is medial malleolus, this is medial malleolus, this is medial malleolus. So you have to palpate against the medial malleolus. Then dorsalis pedis, here is at the base of first metatarsal. So this is the location of dorsalis pedis. Lateral to the external sinus, it is at the base of first metatarsal. So these are metatarsal bones. First metatarsal, second metatarsal, third, fourth, and fifth. So at the base of first metatarsal, you can palpate dorsalis pedis artery. These are the location. So in lower limb, femoral artery, popliteal artery, dorsalis pedis, and posterior tibial. These are the four arteries. You should know their anatomical location, and you should be able to demonstrate how to palpate these arteries. It is a frequently asked question to show how to palpate dorsalis pedis, what is the anatomical location, anatomical location of posterior tibial, how to palpate anatomical location of popliteal artery, how to palpate. So you should know all peripheral pulsation. So this completes your pulse, rate, rhythm, volume, and peripheral pulsation. These are the 4 points you should know about the pulse. Next from blood pressure, we will only cover the theoretical part because how to check blood pressure, how to measure, it is a practical part. We cannot teach online. So this is the BP apparatus, this is the cuff, this is the mercury. You have to wrap this cuff around the arm of the patient. So these are the tubings which should be on the medial aspect. So how to tie the cuff? This tubing should be on medial aspect of the arm. This cuff should be wrapped down, not too tightly, not too loose. It should be snugly fit. Your BP apparatus should be at the heart level. This should be at the heart level of the patient. Now there are two methods for measuring blood pressure. One is palpatory method, second is auscultatory method. I just take the theoretical part because it is not possible to teach how to measure blood pressure just theoretically. It is a practical work actually. But just we will discuss. So there are two methods for measuring blood pressure, palpatory method and auscultatory method. So by palpatory method you can measure only systolic pressure. By auscultatory method you can measure systolic plus diastolic pressure. So what is palpatory method? So once you wrap the cuff of the sphygmomanometer to the arm of the patient, what is the next step? Next step is you have to feel the radial artery or brachial artery of the patient. You feel either radial artery or brachial artery of the patient. Once you confirm or you feel that artery, now you start raising the pressure of mercury. You start raising the pressure of mercury. Then at what level your pulse disappear? When you are raising the pressure of mercury, 90, 100, 110, 120 like that. So at what level your pulse disappear is your systolic pressure. By palpatory method. By palpatory method you can measure only systolic pressure. The level at which your pulse disappear is your systolic pressure. Now by auscultatory method you can take diastolic pressure also and systolic pressure also. Now you have to further raise the pressure if with the aim to occlude your brachial artery flow completely. So you can raise the pressure of mercury up to 150, 160 or 170. The aim is to occlude the artery completely. Then with the help of stethoscope, that means auscultatory method, you can measure systolic plus diastolic. Now after occluding the brachial artery completely by raising the pressure of mercury up to 170 or 160 or 180, you keep your stethoscope, over the brachial artery or in the cuboidal fossa. You keep your stethoscope in the cuboidal fossa. Now you have to slowly release the pressure. Now you have to slowly release the pressure of mercury. At what level you hear sound? At what level you hear sound? These sounds are called Korsakoff sound. These sounds are called Korsakoff sound. So at what level you hear the sound is your systolic pressure, or the level at which those sound comes is your systolic pressure. Then you have to further decrease the pressure of mercury. On further decreasing the pressure of mercury, suppose at 130 level you hear sound, that means your systolic pressure is 130. Suppose at 150 level you hear sound, that means your systolic pressure is 150. Then on further decreasing the pressure, suppose up to 80, 90, this sound disappear or muffled. Sound disappear or muffled. That is your diastolic pressure. That is your diastolic pressure. So like that, you can check systolic as well as diastolic pressure with the help of auscultatory method, with the help of stethoscope. So auscultatory method to measure the blood pressure. Now there is a range for normal blood pressure. So blood pressure is a variable. It is not fixed for every person. Pulse, blood pressure, respiration, these are variable parameters. They are not fixed, or there is no fixed single reading for every person. There is no fixed single reading for every person. These are the variable parameters. So there should be a range. Just as we learned that normal pulse rate is 60 to 100. It is a range. 60 to 100 is a range. So blood pressure is also there is a range for normal systolic pressure and diastolic pressure. There is also a range. So what is the normal systolic pressure? The normal systolic pressure is up to 100 to 130. 100 to 130 or 140. So normal systolic pressure is 100 to 140 and normal diastolic pressure is 60 to 90. That is the normal range. 100 to 140, 60 to 90 is the normal range for blood pressure. Always remember 100 to 140, 60 to 90 is the normal range for blood pressure. Now, what is hypertension? This is the normal blood pressure. Below 100, it is hypotension. Below 100 systolic, we call it as hypotension or shock. Above 140, we call it as hypertension. So above hypertension, below hypotension. Now the hypertension is divided in three stages, stage 1, 2 and 3. Hypertension divided in three stages, 1, 2 and 3. What is stage 1? Stage 1 is systolic blood pressure range 140 to 159, diastolic 90 to 99. Stage 2, 160 or 160 to 179 and 100 to 109. And stage 3, more than 180 and more than 110 diastolic. So 1, 2, 3. 140 to 159, 90 to 99, 160 to 179, 100 to 109, more than 180 and more than 110. So 1, 2, 3. And this is pre-hypertension stage. This is pre-hypertension 120 to 139 and 80 to 89. This is called pre-hypertension stage. But we take normal range 100 to 140 and 60 to 90. So that is about the blood pressure, hypertension, stages. Now this respiratory rate. So in case of respiratory rate, these are the points to be noted. You have to count first the respiratory rate, pattern, and use of accessory muscle. These are the 3 points very important for respiratory rate. Count the respiratory rate, pattern of the breathing, pattern of breathing pattern, and use of accessory muscles. Now normal respiratory rate is 62 by 20 per minute. That is the normal respiratory rate, 60 to 20 per minute. Pattern, there are three patterns of breathing: abdominal thoracic, thoraco-abdominal, and abdominal. So what is meant by abdominal thoracic? Abdominal thoracic means that the abdominal movements are more prominent than thoracic movements. Abdominal, when patient is asked to take deep breaths, or patient is asked to take breaths, and you have to watch thoracic movement as well as abdominal movements. You have to watch both the movements, the expansion of the chest, that is thoracic movement, and abdominal movement also. So which one is more dominant or which one is more prominent? If abdominal movements are more prominent than thoracic movement, it is called abdominal thoracic pattern of breathing, and it is common in male. If thoracic movements are more prominent or expansion of chest is more prominent than abdominal movements, it is called thoraco-abdominal. It is common in females. It is common in females. And third pattern is abdominal, means no chest expansion or very poor thoracic movements. Only abdominal movements are present. It is also called paradoxical breathing, and it is seen in case of diaphragm paralysis. Diaphragm is your primary muscle of respiration. Diaphragm is the primary muscle of respiration. If there occurs paralysis of diaphragm, there is no chest expansion, no chest movements, and only abdominal movements occur. That is paradoxical breathing. So pattern of breathing, there are three patterns: abdominal thoracic, thoraco-abdominal, and abdominal. These are the three patterns of breathing. Normal respiratory rate is 60 to 20. Now the use of accessory muscles of respiration. Now which are the muscles of respiration? The primary muscle of respiration is diaphragm, as already I told. Now which are the accessory muscles? Means these accessory muscles are not routinely used. Only diaphragm is used in normal breathing. Accessory muscles being used whenever patient is feeling breathless. Patient has to work more when the work of breathing is increased. When patient is respiratory distress, patient is breathless, then at that time patient is using this extra muscle of respiration. That is the accessory muscles of respiration. So these are used only when patient having difficulty in breathing, patient is respiratory distress, whenever there is increased workload of the breathing. So which are these muscles? These muscles are stellomuscular muscle, trapezius muscle, scalene muscles, then pectoralis major, minor, serratus anterior, and latissimus dorsi. These are the accessory muscles of respiration. Patient is using whenever patient is having difficulty in breathing. So these muscles become more prominent. Stellomuscular muscle become very prominent if patient is in respiratory distress. In case of trapezius, patient is elevating the shoulders. That is the action of trapezius. Patient is elevating shoulders when patient is breathless. That is the action of trapezius. Then scalene anterior, posterior, pectoralis major, minor, latissimus dorsi, serratus anterior. These are the extremes of expression. This is again a commonly asked question in practical. So in case of respiratory rate, the rate, pattern of breathing, and use of accessory muscles. You have to see if the patient is breathless, if the patient is respiratory distress, if patient is not comfortably lying down position, patient is in sitting position, with shoulders are elevated, with muscle is very prominent, that means patient is using accessory muscles. So this is all about the vital parameters, about pulse rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate. In case of pulse rate, rhythm, volume, and peripheral pulsation. In case of blood pressure, palpatory method and oscillatory method. By palpatory method, only systolic pressure. By oscillatory method, systolic plus diastolic pressure. And in case of respiratory rate, count the respiratory rate, watch the pattern. You have to watch thoracic movement, abdominal movements, and you have to decide the pattern. And use of accessory muscles, you have to see or observe which muscles are prominent and whether patient is using or not. So diaphragm is the primary muscle, and these are the accessory muscles used only when work of breathing is increased. Patient is breathing. So this is the method of Counting respiratory rate, you can keep your hand or palm either over the chest or over the epigastric region. You have to keep your palm either over the chest or over the epigastric region, and you can count the movements. You have to count the movements of either chest or abdomen complete for 1 minute. So you have to see the movements of the chest or abdomen complete for 1 minute. That is your respiratory rate, and this is the method of counting respiratory rate. So this is all about vital parameters. So general examination starts with neurological assessment, patient conscious, oriented, time, present person. After that comes temperature, whether patient is febrile or febrile. Then you have to take the vital parameters, pulse, blood pressure, respiration, and then other points of general examination. So we will discuss